Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be on Capitol Hill later today for a high-profile hearing, and somebody in that room, the ranking member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Democrat Bob Menendez, who is joining me now live. Senator Menendez, thank you for coming on the show.
Good to be with you, Howard.
So you obviously have some questions for Mike Pompeo, but here's the thing. When it comes to that summit with Vladimir Putin, that one-on-one meeting, Mike Pompeo was not in the room. So do you really think you're going to get the answers you want about the conversation that happened?
Well, we're going to test and see what we get. First of all, when we ask him these questions, we're going to ask him, how do you know what these answers are? Did the president give you a direct briefing? Did the president give someone else a briefing who gave you a briefing? And if not, obviously, we'll have to judge his answers by that part of the meetings with Putin that he did participate with. But this is why we continue to press on the question of getting access to the interpreter, at least in a classified setting, so that we know exactly what happened.
But are there any indications that that is realistically going to happen, that this interpreter will come to the Hill to answer questions?
Well, we're going to continue to press and seek ways to try to achieve it. And if we don't, then, you know, this will be one of the challenges of an administration and a presidency that increasingly is secretive, less transparent, that is consequential to our national security, as well as to the American people knowing what their president is or is not giving away at these meetings.
Setting aside that interpreter, is Mike Pompeo enough? Is there a move right now to try for other administration officials, specifically in your conversations with your counterpart on the GOP side, Senator Bob Corker? Will he bring in more people?
Well, this is probably, the answer is we want as many people as we can, and the chairman has told me that this is the beginning of a series of oversight hearings. I'm glad, because we haven't had a full committee, Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing on Russia or North Korea in a year. So I'm glad that we're going to have some robust oversight, bring as many as we can. But at the end of the day, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. Since no one was in the room, the question is, when the president stepped out, did he debrief Mike Pompeo or the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats? Did he debrief his National Security Advisor, Ambassador Bolton? Then we will get to understand who's the closest to knowing. But the interpreter is only the one who really knows what transpired.
We're putting up on screen, Senator, I know you can't see it, but a list of things that administration officials have said, and the president has said was talked about in this meeting, things like terrorism, Israeli security, North Korean denuclearization, etc. What is interesting is this new Pew poll that shows 55%, more than half of Republican voters, say Americans do not have the right to know what was said in that conversation. Why do you think that is?
Well, I guess they're so blindly of the faith with this president. But listen, there's a reason that presidents normally have either their Secretary of State or their National Security Advisor or Director of National Intelligence with them. Because if not, the only narrative that is heard is either the narrative of your opponent, in this case Putin. And we're getting more information, at least from what their perspective of the meeting was, from Russian military and information sources, than we are from our own government. I don't know whether or not there were agreements made about sanctions on Russia. I don't know whether there's any agreement made about NATO or anything else, and that's what we have to test.
Senator, very quickly before I let you go, this Trump-Cohen recording that has now come out, your reaction to it?
Well, look, above all, obviously it shows the president knew, which is once again a clear indication of his willingness to lie. He lied as a candidate. He's lied as president about critical things. I don't know whether it's a crime. I'll let prosecutors figure that out. But I do know this. It just goes to show why we are pushing on the questions of transparency at the State Department, at the White House, and before this committee.
Senator Menendez, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. We're going to be watching that hearing with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo happening at 3 o'clock Eastern.